So, hello everybody. Welcome to another session today. It's already afternoon, so I guess you already got plenty of input. Happy to have you here. I like to talk about Apache Camel and how to bring that into the clouds today. So let's have a look. Okay, first of all, who am I? I'm Markus Eisele, coming from Germany all the way, 10 hours flight, kind of exhausting, a little bit jet lag, water helps. I work as a developer advocate for Red Hat. The difference between what you probably know as evangelists is that I'm not talking about products, at least not directly, but about our upstream open source solutions, which finally end up being productized and available for you to as supported versions. So Camel is one big part of our integration solutions, and I would like to know who is actually using Camel already. Okay, that's a bunch of folks. So you know that Apache Camel is an integration framework. And honestly, I've always been a big fan. So working in the industry since a couple of years, I guess it's a 2-digit number in the meantime, I've been working with a German ISV, and we've been building systems for big corporations. And I can't recall a single one who haven't had a significant amount of integration requirements. So it's always about getting systems to talk to each other and work with each other. And instead of going down the enterprise application integration road, I always appreciated a very quick and easy way to do things. And that's where Camel came in handy. Camel basically simplifies system integration, and it is kind of a toolbox for you to use, which is equipped and packed with a bunch of stuff already. So you have out-of-the-box integration components that just work. You could just use them. It has different DSLs, Java-based DSLs, XML-based DSLs, so I'm going to show you some more examples later. It's still hard to get your hands on what Camel is in a single sentence. I think the best approach is to think of it as an implementation of this book. This is pretty much the base for whatever Camel tries to achieve. So Camel is a physical implementation of enterprise integration patterns. And to make it a little bit more concrete, this is exactly what that looks like. So the two guys who have written that book did a bunch of integration projects in their life, and they try to extract kind of a best practices. And Camel is exactly the implementation of all the best integration practices that you could come across in our industry today. So it's not only a framework, a lightweight one, it also is a pretty complete one. And that always makes it very, very interesting. It's easy to integrate, easy to spin off. I think it's a great thing to really use. Why Camel? I mean, there are so many other commercial products out there, bigger ones, integration solutions, frameworks, well, a little bit more than that. I think to me it burns down to the lightweight and the simplicity it has. Anybody who wants to guess how big Camel's core is measured in megabytes? Just shoot it out. I have stickers here for you, so whoever. 15. The core, just the core, without the components.
300K.
Huh? Half a megabyte, okay. Pretty close, it's 2.5 megabytes actually, so this is nothing, right? So this is probably Apache Commons is bigger than that. So, and if you get all the integration capabilities out of the box for that little size, it's really cool. And it literally connects to anything. There's a Facebook connector, a Twitter connector, SAP connectors. It's all there. There's an H7 connector. I don't know, 150 plus components if you really do a directory of all the components in GitHub. As of today, it's probably more close to 200 components already. And the tooling is pretty interesting. So you know that JBoss has a complete Eclipse tooling at hand, and the Camel tooling is totally minimal invasive, working on the XML DSL. So it outlines and displays whatever routes you build with Camel. But before I dig deeper into that, I'll just show you a little bit. So this is basically what the tooling generates when you build a very simple route, and this is what I'm actually walking you through here. Let's assume for a minute that we have an order coming in via a queue. You name them, just supplier or whatever, or even end customers. Then we have a router component which inspects the order and decides if it's a widget order or not. This is pretty readable, isn't it? So pretty logic. If it's not a widget, it just gets sent to the other queue, like in the rest queue. If we put some braces around there, it starts looking like Java. What we are missing are some dots. There we go. That's Java, right? So, and that's exactly the Java DSL that Camel supports. And it's just a teensy little bit more. I mean, we just need to define the different endpoints. In this case, we need the new order endpoint, which obviously is a JMS queue. We need to decide where the router can check for if the payload is a widget or not. So in this case, it's an XPath expression. And of course, we need the other two endpoints, so widget and the rest. That's it. Just some more imports, and you have your first Java DSL-based Camel route. And seriously, if I think about what it would have taken me to implement that in an app server, configure all the JMS queues, configure all the mappings in various XML files, this is just brilliant. Why aren't we all using it? I have no idea. Cool. Absolutely cool. So what else? The Java DSL is my personal favorite because I'm a middleware developer. So Camel has its roots in a little bit of a different world, like in the Spring world. I have to admit that there still is a lot of Spring in Camel. And it's more or less natural that actually the XML DSL is also there. So the same route expressed in DSL looks exactly like that. And still readable, even if it's not my personal favorite, right? What else could we use? We could use some fancy scripting language, right? So that would be helpful. Groovy. What about Groovy? This is basically what it looks in Groovy. The best part here is that we could use closures. So this is a real advantage until we have a Java 8 compatible Camel. I haven't checked lately, but I think they are still working on it. Yesterday or today, Camel 2.15 came out. So whoever wants to upgrade, feel free. We have a new release out there. What else am I missing? Java, XML, Groovy, Scala, yoo-hoo! Who played around with Scala already? This is, okay, that's not 4 or 5 hands. That's not that much. Still, we support it. You can go ahead. I like it to a certain extent, but yeah, I'm a Java developer. I'll ever be. The real base for its success basically is that you could define endpoints via URIs. So it's pretty easy, understandable, and natural what is going on here, right? So you are obviously reading from a file folder the orders, and whatever we read here is going to be deleted afterwards. So we have attributes that we can configure on those URIs, and they are readable, usable. It's easy to understand and easy to look up. And I have to admit, the documentation for the individual components is just extensive. So all the attributes are really at your fingertips whenever you need them. Camel as a whole is a little bit of a different story. Looking at an individual route is pretty much the simplistic thing you could do. There's a lot more to Camel. So Camel can not only run a single route, but indefinitely many, whatever you like to run in it. And the most important part is the wrapper around all that is the Camel context. And this ties in with the components and allows the communication. So the real basic heart of Camel basically is a routing engine, which is some kind of unsurprisingly because it's an integration framework, right? But the good part here is you could also extend the components and invent new ones whenever you need to. So you're not stuck with ones that are delivered with Camel, but you could extend them on your needs. It's pretty easy and straightforward to integrate a new, to develop a new component once you've understood the message flow in that routing engine internally. This is something that you really need to wrap your head around. But it's more like developing for Camel and not developing with Camel necessarily. So I think the biggest advantage is just to pick one of those 150, 200 plus components that are already out there. I actually have a favorite component, and this is the source code, using it. Anybody an idea what's going on here? This is not a quiz, I just want to get rid of my sticker sheets. So
This is a REST DSL.
Perfect. This is a REST DSL, and it... Again, sorry?
I think there's 3 different components that can implement this.
There are a bunch of components that actually can use... Here's your sticker sheet, thank you. That can use REST-based DSL. The highlighted parts in red here actually are the most interesting parts because there is a Swagger integration in the meantime. So you could just easily add some more documentation to your REST endpoints and run them through Swagger, inspect them, and have all the documentation generated for you, which is just awesome. And the funny part is, this is exactly one of the integration points where it comes to Scala and Spring together with Camel. And the out-of-the-box components only work with Spring-based applications. If you want to use that in a Java EE server, then you have to do some tricks and just overwrite basically the bootstrapping process that hands over the information in the Java-based DSL to the Swagger processor. And this is easy to do. I have blog posts up on my blog, so whenever you get hands on the slides later on, you could just read about it. It's just brilliant because you don't have to do anything else. It's easily integratable into the Maven process. But that's just my favorite. What else do we have? We have data formats. Of course, also pluggable. So messages can be marshaled and unmarshaled from them and just put into the right format for you. It's kind of a no-brainer, I guess, but still, it's all there. Another one is the expression languages, the amount of expression languages that we support, 15 different ones. This is bottom line, what Camel actually is. An integration framework with different routing DSLs, and it shouldn't have a real container dependency. I'm not talking about Spring as a container, it's just another framework, right? So there is basically no restriction where you really can deploy Camel. It runs on a bunch of containers. I'm coming later to that. And as I said, the core is just insanely small. And I've seen many projects that just use Camel inside a Java EE application to just make integration easier. Honestly, this is a workaround. You should use Java EE mechanisms to talk to queues and stuff like that, but it could be just that much easier by using Camel, right? Absolutely perfect. And that's why I really like writing the Camel. That was just the short introduction. What do customers tell us about Camel? Actually, it rocks. It has far more features than I just tested here, right? So you could unit test Camel routes out of your IDE. You don't have to introduce any other frameworks. It's all there. JUnit support out of the box. You could really easy get started with some very basic Maven artifacts. So there are some archetypes out there that help you getting bootstrapped in seconds. And the tooling is still a little bit restricted to Eclipse. I personally would like to see something built in NetBeans or even IntelliJ, but we're not there yet. And looking at the recent microservices hype, and I've heard people talking about Camel routes as microservices. This is a decent thought. I like it. I mean, it does one thing well, which is kind of the predicate for all microservices. So a route does exactly that one thing. And if we want to scale out and have really many instances running that service, that route, then we definitely could do better in scaling that. And another thing is the DevOps continuous delivery pipeline for those tiny components. That could be really improved. A few of you have been sitting in the talk before by Christian Posta. He showed you a little bit more about how to do DevOpsy things and continuous delivery with the help of Fuse, I guess. So we're getting there. Still, something is missing in between. So what does it take to make a camel kiss a cloud? I found pictures of camels kissing clouds, believe me. Didn't want to put them in. Fabric 8 is the short answer. The integral part of Fuse, the fabric, which can produce a lot of infrastructure-related things from profiles and put them onto managed instances. Okay, here comes the more complicated part. What is Fabric 8? It's another integration platform. Okay, I'm sorry for that. It's just exactly the issue here, why I'm here and why I'm talking about it. Camel is the integration framework, and Fabric 8 is the fitting integration platform where all those bits and pieces come together. It basically tries to solve one big problem: how to make complex deployments easier. And this is totally true for all kinds of middleware-related things. So it doesn't only touch Camel in that case, it could also reach out to, let's say, Java EE servers like Wildfly, or your simple web applications. Fabric 8 can deploy a lot more and distribute a lot more. And it actually helps you stage stuff from left to right. What else do we have? It puts a little bit more intelligence and glue on top, which helps you to configure and manage your service instances. We all know that it doesn't end with the test cases who run through successfully for the individual camel routes. We just need to make sure that whatever container it's running on is also correctly configured and working. So this is what Fabric 8 helps you a lot with. My favorite feature probably is rolling upgrades. So Fabric 8 can version your deployments and can definitely help you with porting it through different stages and environments. And let's say if you have 5 different instances with your Camel deployments running, you could just simply test a new version of your Camel-based application on one instance. And if it's working fine, then you just increase and bump the version number on all other instances. And this is exactly what Fabric 8 does, plus a lot more. It's hard to talk about that. Wait, I'm looking for that. I'm coming back to the other slides. This is exactly what it looks like. You are on the left side of the slide, so you have your IDE in front of you. You're working on your Camel-based application. It's hopefully already Mavenized. That makes a lot of things easier. And you're just using another plugin for your Fabric 8 magic. Let's say we have a Maven Fabric 8 plugin, and this just needs to be configured. And this is all happening in your Maven POM file. And together with building and packaging your application, the Fabric 8 plugin actually can talk to the Fabric 8 server and upload your application plus the configuration to the Fabric 8 instance. So it's kind of your central application and documentation repository for all your assets that you want to deploy somewhere. And beside that, Fabric 8 allows you to basically assign those individual assets to a number of instances. And it has a really decent UI, which I missed to put some screenshots up here, but believe me, it's pretty easy. It's called Hot.io. It's another open source project based on latest AngularJS. So it's really neat and easy to use. At the end, that's pretty much it. It's a button click for you to distribute your applications in the cloud if you have a Fabric 8 instance running. And you don't have to worry about networking, orchestration, scaling, all that things that usually are very heavily infrastructure centered. You don't. Just simple. You start using your IDE, use your Maven as you would use with any other application. And if you're ready, you just don't deploy to an app server, you deploy to the Fabric. How does that work? It's obviously some kind of registry that we need, so we use Zookeeper for that. And we also need some kind of a reliable repository that's making all that magic happen. And we all know Git, right? So it's a combination of Zookeeper and Git. It was initially intended to be used with OSGI based, especially with Carafe server. Still, it can do a lot more in the meantime. Fabric 8 is just in the making, especially the version 2, which will be a complete turn down from the architecture I'm showing you here. This is basically why I only put those 2 slides in for your reference, because the most interesting part is what's coming up over the next couple of months. So Fabric 8 will be bumped in version numbers to V2, and this will be based on all the latest magic like Docker and Kubernetes, and it doesn't any longer care about the real things like middleware you want to distribute. You could just distribute everything that runs in a Docker container and can be configured in an image. And of course, it is very compliant to what we do with OpenShift at the very moment. So OpenShift is also turning into the Docker direction. The project is called V3. You can get your hands on that already. It's all out there. It's all open source. Fabric 8 V2 has a very complete documentation and guides you through it. So if you want to play around with it, all you need is probably boot to Docker or any other Docker-based solution. Just download a Docker image where Fabric 8 is already running in and start playing around with that. More or less the same is true for OpenShift Origin. So If I could encourage you to try this out as a community, being interested in how to get stuff to the clouds, it's a good way to actually give feedback and see if it works like you would expect it to be. Who's using Docker already as of today in production? Okay, where are you using it? As a personal playground or dev? Dev, okay, fair. This was one hand, right? So I'm really curious because Docker is everywhere right now and all the container discussions. And I told you I'm a Java EE middleware kind of guy. And I have to admit, I tried to install boot to Docker on Windows, which is probably double bad, but I made it work. But still, I mean, I just switched to my VPN connection and the complete networking of the VirtualBox completely screwed up. Nothing worked anymore. So it's just not native in my genes to care about all those networking stuff. But this is probably the worst part at the very moment. And I really, really hope that Fabric 8 and OpenShift v3 will make it a lot easier for us as developers. I don't want to care about networks. It's like databases, right? It's just running somewhere and it works. I don't want to look into that. So it will make things easier when we have a usable version of that. The basic is pretty appealing, though. We have a very, very teensy kernel for those Docker containers, and we could add images to them, like layered images, and that's about it. So all you have to do is just use a decent set of images, build an image for your application, bundle everything in the container, and start it. That's pretty much it. And most of you will have seen some how-tos and getting started tutorials about Docker. It's a one-liner to grab those configuration files that you need from the internet, and Docker starts downloading it instantly, and you have an Apache server up and running. You have a Wildfly up and running. It's all there. It's public in the Docker Hub repository. So it's no longer downloading 2.5 gigabyte of anything, trying to install it on Windows, trying to make it work, activating user accounts and stuff like that. So I kind of follow that approach. What I still find hard is to imagine how that could look like in production. That's where Kubernetes actually jumps in. And this is not exactly my favorite visualization of it, but it might be a comparably good explanation of what it really does. So Kubernetes actually assigns container instances to different nodes. Let's call them pods, because pods can run on nodes depending on what the node is capable of. So a node is a physical thing and a pod is an organizational thing. And if we look into that Tomcat example again, then we think we need a port 8080, something like that, to be exposed to our browsers and clients. And this isn't easy, especially not if you run the same container requiring the same port on the same physical instance, which can't just be true, right? So there has to be some magic in here. And this is what Kubernetes does. It takes care for all your port mappings and stuff like that, and makes sure that services which are tagged like an HTTP port 8080 service, across the board, across all containers and pods, get exposed as a central proxy, as service consistently to all clients. Yes, it's complicated, and I said I don't want to care about it, but I just want to let you know what's in there. So what we have as of today is basically the V1 versus V2 battle. So we started out with having something innovative, which has Maven-based profiles, and we're moving over to all the fancy buzzwords, like Docker, Kubernetes, and we're actually using the same packaging mechanisms that Docker and Kubernetes propose for packaging applications, which are application zips, right? So funny enough, Red Hat is actually contributing to Kubernetes together with Google. So we're bringing that further. And the big motivator behind this is obviously OpenShift. So I'm really looking forward to having that in production. If you want to play around with Fabric 8 as of today, you have different options. You can download it. Just go to fabric8.io. You can sign up for a free account on OpenShift, which is our online cloud, and just get one of the community cartridges. There's kind of a marketplace, so whatever you want to find, you'll probably find a working cartridge there. Just grab it, fire it up, and play around with that. Some more links for you. I haven't shown you the tooling so far. The JBoss Developer Studio is our supported solution here. It's completely integrated with Eclipse, so you get all the debugging informations. I have to admit it has some rough edges still, but the good news is it's totally minimal invasive. So instead of having some heavyweight tooling what requires a bunch of additional meta information, this tooling just reads your XML files. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be extended to read Java DSLs. This is something it can't do at the very moment. So if you're working with a Java-based DSL, you will never get that fancy, nice pictures. If I got you excited actually about it, and you haven't used Camel so far, there is an extensive amount of examples out there. So for every component and even more complex parts, we also have a new place on the web, which is called the JBoss Demo Central. This is a GitHub organization where a bunch of demos for all kinds of Fuse-based, Camel-based integration solutions are ready for you to just pick up and dig into. It's all comparably well documented. So, but anyway, contributions welcome. So when you find something that isn't working for you, let us know. Beside all that, you actually have the biggest choice when it comes to deployment strategies. So whatever you want to do and however you want to deploy Camel, and with or without Fabric 8, it's actually an extensive list of different options for you to choose from. And Fabric 8 as the cloud option here is just one teensy alongside many, many others. So if I could encourage you to just at least look at Camel, that would be your solutions pace. Whatever server you're using, I'm pretty sure we can spin an instance of Camel up there. What could you do if you want to know more than I did today? There are actually a bunch of good books. Camel in Action is obviously written by Klaus Ibsen, who is the Mr. Camel. If you ever get a chance to listen to him, it's just very inspiring. The book is an easy read, very, very complete. I'm still waiting for an update though. The latest features aren't covered, as a matter of fact, so that's probably what books are all for, but there's an extensive errata on the website for Manning, so it's a good choice. The newer one is actually the Pack Publishing book, so if you want to look into that. We have different ways for support and asking questions and community interaction. Most likely the mailing lists. I regularly get bounced back from my Google email account because there's such a heavy traffic on it. So many people ask many questions. If you have something that you want to get solved or you can't get any further with, the mailing lists are a good place to start. We also look at Stack Overflow in that case. And you'll find all of the engineers more or less frequently on the IRC channels, which is our corporate communication backbone in any case. So just feel free to look around there. What else do we have? In case you need a supported solution, please look into Fuse. There's another product which also bundles Camel, which is Service Mix, so it's still all there. The typical pitch for my virtual JBook. So in case you haven't heard about the virtual JBook so far, it's a virtual user group, basically run online. We are on Meetup and on Google+. So you could just simply join us and be notified about new sessions. We haven't had a Camel session in a while, but I'm pretty sure there's something upcoming. Just lately, something about Cape Dwarf, which is the Google App Engine implementation on Java EE on Wildfly. And there's some more upcoming about Android developer stuff. So follow us on Twitter or just sign up to Meetup if you want to see latest and greatest. And if you want to catch up with more Red Hat folks, with more cloud stuff, with more latest developments, it's definitely time to look into Devnation. Registration open tonight, I guess. So it's very, very early bird phase, and it's pretty cheap to get hands on a ticket. We also announced some featured speakers already. I'm very fast today, which is not big and not surprising, so I'd like to answer all your questions in case you have some. Otherwise, you gain some more minutes for coffee and cookies. Thank you.
How is Fabricate discovering the camel routes that are deployed? Is that through JMX?
Kind of. As a matter of fact, I hate JMX, and those guys decided it's not the right choice. There is another open source project called Jolokia, and Jolokia does nothing else than discovering all the JMX beans in a JVM instance and expose all of them as REST-based JSON endpoints. So Jolokia is exactly the missing piece between all that and Hot.io, the console that displays all the camel routes and stuff like that, uses exactly that information. Mm-hmm. Thank you. If you want to grab a sticker, just come forward. I have some left. Thanks a lot.